I never thought dying in the Arizona desert would feel like coming home. The sun had baked my skin raw, turning my breaths into ragged gasps that tasted like dust and regret. And as my vision blurred into a haze of red rock and endless sky, I whispered a name I hadn't spoken in years, Roger. That's when he appeared, not as some hallucination from heat stroke, but real as the rattlesnake coiled 10 feet away, his silhouette cutting through the shimmer like a promise I didn't deserve. "Easy there, stranger," he drawled, his voice rough as gravel but laced with something softer. "You look like you've been running from more than just the sun." His name was Roger Hayes, and he pulled me from the brink that afternoon in the summer of 2025, when the world felt like it was unraveling faster than a cheap motel sheet. I'd been driving aimless loops out of Phoenix, my beat-up Ford pickup choking on sand, until it finally gave out near the Superstition Mountains. Why? Because I'd just torched every bridge in my life back in Tucson. My job at the community college, where I taught American Lit to kids who didn't give a damn. My family, who still pretended my phase from college was just that. And worst of all, the man I'd loved for 7 years, who turned out to be married with a kid on the way. Betrayal has a way of hollowing you out, leaving you light enough to blow away on a desert wind. So yeah, I was Christian Hale, 32-year-old English prof turned ghost, wandering into the wild blue yonder with nothing but a half-empty water bottle and a heart full of what-ifs. Roger didn't ask questions at first. He hoisted me onto his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Juniper, like I weighed less than a saddlebag, and we rode back to his spread, a ramshackle ranch tucked in a canyon fold where the world ended and silence began. His place was pure Old West meets stubborn survival. Solar panels jury-rigged to a tin roof, a windmill creaking lazy circles, and a corral holding a handful of cattle that lowed like they knew the score. He settled me on his couch, an ancient leather thing that smelled of sage and saddle soap, and fed me cool well water laced with electrolytes he'd scavenged from some ghost town supply run. "Drink slow," he said, his calloused hand steady on mine. "Rushing it now just make you puke." Up close, Roger was the kind of rugged that hits you like a gut punch. Mid-30s, broad-shouldered from years of wrangling fence posts and fate, with sun-bleached hair under a battered Stetson and eyes the color of storm clouds over the Rincon Range. He had that cowboy economy of words, but when he spoke, it landed deep, like poetry carved from granite. "Name's Roger," he said finally, sinking into a rocker across from me. "You got one, or you planning to haunt me like one of them lost miners?" "Christian," I managed, my throat still raw. "Thanks for this. I owe you." He waved it off, but his gaze lingered, assessing not just the wreck of me, but something underneath, the tremor in my hands that wasn't just dehydration, the way my eyes darted like I expected the door to burst open any second. "Owe me nothing. Desert's got a way of chewing up folks who need chewing. You eat something solid yet?" Dinner was simple, beans and cornbread from a cast-iron skillet, washed down with black coffee strong enough to strip paint. We sat at his scarred oak table under a single bulb that buzzed like a trapped hornet, the night pressing in through the windows like an uninvited guest. That's when the questions started, gentle as a summer rain, but probing all the same. I told him bits. The job I quit after my boss suggested. I toned down the rainbow pin on my lanyard. The family dinners in Scottsdale where my dad's Bible quotes hung heavier than the humidity. But I skirted the real knife twist. Alex, the adjunct history prof who'd whispered sweet nothings in my ear while slipping a ring on his wife's finger behind my back. 7 years of stolen weekends, of building a life in shadows, and poof, gone, with a text that read like a Dear John from hell. "I'm sorry, man. It's not you. It's the life I didn't know I wanted." Roger listened without interrupting. His fork paused midair, those gray eyes holding mine like he could see the fault lines cracking through my chest. When I trailed off, he leaned back, the chair groaning under him. "Sounds like you got handed a raw deal, Christian. But running into the devil's playground ain't fixin' it. It's just trading one hell for another." "You sound like you've been there," I said, half joking, but his face shuddered like a storm front rolling in. He stood abruptly, clearing plates with more force than necessary. "Maybe. Night's coming on. Guest rooms down the hall. Clean sheets. No questions." I lay awake that night, the desert's chill seeping through the adobe walls, listening to the coyotes yip like they were laughing at my mess. Roger's story? It started slipping out the next morning, over eggs scrambled with green chiles on the porch, the sun climbing slow and merciless. He wasn't one for spilling guts, but something in my unraveling must have cracked his armor. Grew up in these parts, he began, staring out at the scrub oak and creosote bush. Dad ran cattle till the drought in '08 wiped him out. Mom left when I was 10, said the sand got in her soul. Left me and Pa to fend. Taught me to ride before I could read. It was a hook, that glimpse into his world, but he reeled it back quick. We spent the day mending a stretch of barbed wire fence that snaked along the canyon rim, the work mindless enough to let words flow. Juniper grazed nearby, her tail flicking flies, while Roger handed me gloves that smelled faintly of his skin, leather and earth, with a hint of something warmer, like cedar after rain. He talked about the ranch life, the isolation that bred men hard as flint but lonely as echoes. Folks in town think cowboys are all John Wayne, he said, driving a staple into a post with a swing that hummed with pent-up force. Truth is, it's just you and the land, day in, day out. No room for bullshit. By afternoon, sweat-soaked and saddle-sore, we broke under a mesquite tree for shade. That's when he shared the first real piece, the story that would gut me later, but in that moment felt like a bridge across the chasm between us. Had a buddy once, he said, voice dropping low as if the wind might carry it off. Name was Eli. We grew up thick as thieves, racing dirt bikes across the flats, sneaking beers from Pa's cooler. He was the light in all that dust, laugh like thunder, eyes green as agave after rain. Joined the rodeo circuit together when we were 18, chasing that 8-second glory. I watched him, the way his fingers toyed with a loose thread on his jeans, and felt a pull low in my gut. Not lust, but recognition, the kind that says I've been that broken too. Sounds like more than buddies, I ventured, heart thumping against my ribs. Roger's jaw tightened, but he didn't pull away. Yeah, more. First time we kissed was under a full moon out by the salt flats, fireflies dancing like stars fallen to earth. Thought that was it, us against the world. But Eli, he had secrets, big ones. The air hung heavy then, thick with unspoken storms. I wanted to press, but the look in his eyes stopped me cold, a raw vulnerability that mirrored my own, like we'd both been branded by the same iron. That night, as stars wheeled overhead like God's own scattershot, we sat by a fire pit crackling with mesquite logs, the flames painting his face in flickering gold. He passed me a flask of whiskey, smooth, with a bite like truth, and the story poured out in fits and starts, each word a stone skipped across the dark water of his past. Eli had come out to Roger first, in a hayloft reeking of alfalfa and desperation, tears streaking his dust-caked cheeks. Said he couldn't breathe pretending anymore, Roger murmured, the fire popping like punctuation. I held him that night, felt like the whole damn universe shifted. We kept it quiet, rodeo life's rough on queers, you know? Buckle bunnies and beer guts, all that macho bullshit. But we stole moments, motels off I-10, backroads where no one looked twice. I nodded, the whiskey burning a path to my core. My own ghosts crowded in. Alex's hand in mine at a queer-lit reading in Tempe, the way he'd tense when colleagues wandered too close. Then what? I asked, voice barely above the crackle. Roger's laugh was bitter, a rasp that cut deeper than thorns. Then life happened. Eli got scouted for the big leagues, PBR circuit, Vegas lights, and sponsorships. I stayed local, fixing fences while he chased glory. Letters at first, then calls that grew shorter. Last time I saw him, it was Phoenix, 18. He looked at me like I was a relic, Christian, said he needed space to figure himself out. Turned out, figuring meant a publicist and a beard, some buckle bunny named Tara, parading her around like a trophy. The betrayal landed like a sucker punch, and I saw it in Roger's eyes. The rage, the helplessness, the way love twists into something poisonous when trust shatters. You think that's the worst? He continued, voice threading with something darker. Went to confront him after a show. Found him in the locker room, Logan it up with sponsors. He saw me, froze, like I'd caught him mid-sin. Denied it all, called me crazy, a jealous ex who couldn't handle the spotlight. Security tossed me out like trash. Silence fell then, heavy as the night air, broken only by the distant howl of a coyote. I reached out, my hand covering his on the rough-hewn log, and he didn't pull away. That touch, simple, electric, sparked something between us, a fragile thread of understanding woven from shared scars. "I'm sorry," I whispered, meaning it for him, for me, for every queer kid in flyover country who'd learned to love in whispers. But secrets have a way of festering, and Rogers wasn't done spilling. The next days blurred into a rhythm. Dawn rides across the canyon, where the air hummed with the buzz of honey mesquite and the distant thunder of summer storms. Afternoons lost in the barn, sorting tack while he taught me the knots that held a life together. Bolins for rescues, clove hitches for the ties that bind. He opened up more, layers peeling back like sun-faded paint. The father who died bitter, convinced Roger's softness was why the ranch failed. The town whispers that followed him after Eli's coming out, as straight and successful, branding Roger the fool left behind. Yet there were moments of light, too. Raw, human glimmers that made the ache bearable. One evening, as thunderheads piled like bruised fists on the horizon, we hunkered in the tack room during a flash flood warning. Rain hammered the tin roof like Judgment Day, and Roger pulled out an old acoustic guitar, its wood scarred from years of rough handling. "Eli taught me this," he said, tuning strings that sang under his fingers. He played a melody I'd never heard, slow and haunting, notes weaving through the storm like a confession. As the last chords faded, he looked at me, not with pity, but hunger, the kind born of isolation. "You ever feel like you're waiting for permission to live, Christian? Like the world's handed you a script, but every page is blank where your heart's supposed to go?" I swallowed hard, the rain's rhythm mirroring my pulse. "Every damn day. Alex." He made me believe we could rewrite it. Then he burned the book. Our eyes locked, the air charged thicker than the ozone outside. He set the guitar aside, his hand finding mine again, thumb tracing the ridge of my knuckle. It wasn't passion, not yet, but a recognition, two souls adrift finding harbor in the storm. We talked till the rain eased to a drizzle, sharing fragments of dreams deferred. My half-finished novel about a queer drifter in the Dust Bowl, his quiet wish to expand the ranch into a haven for folks like us, away from prying eyes. But paradise has cracks, and mine started showing that week. My phone, dead for days, charged one night and lit up like a grenade. Voicemails from my sister, texts from Alex pleading we need to talk. I deleted them all, but the weight settled heavier. Roger noticed, of course. Ghosts don't stay buried in the sand. He said over breakfast, his tone light, but eyes sharp. "Tell me about the rest," I pressed, dodging. "Eli, did you ever see him again?" Roger's face darkened, the fork clattering to his plate. "Once. Last year, at a bar in Globe. He was drunk, tearing nowhere in sight. Pulled me into the alley, begging forgiveness, saying it was all a mistake. The marriage, the lies. Said he still dreamed of us, riding free." He paused, voice cracking like dry earth. I wanted to hate him, Christian. God, I did. But love don't work that way. It's a burr in your boot. Hurts like hell, but you carry it anyway. The confession hung there, raw and bleeding, and I felt my own walls crumbling. That afternoon, as we branded a stray calf, the sizzle of iron on hide mirroring the burn in my chest, I broke. Alex wasn't just cheating. I blurted, the words tumbling like rocks in a landslide. He told his wife about us. Framed it like I seduced him, some predatory bullshit. Now his lawyer's circling, threatening to sue for emotional distress if I don't sign an NDA and vanish. Roger's hammer stilled mid-swing. Jesus, Chris. That's not love. That's a cage with teeth. We finished the work in silence, but the rift was there, a fault line widening. Dinner that night was tense, the air thick with unsaid accusations. Was I running to him, or just from? And what of his own shadows? The way he flinched when I mentioned town, the locked trunk in the barn he never let me near. The storm broke 2 days later, literal and figurative. I'd ventured into Apache Junction for supplies, batteries, a new tire for my truck, and returned to find Roger on the porch, face ashen, clutching a crumpled envelope. Eli's dead, he said flatly, the words landing like a gut shot. My stomach dropped. What? How? Overdose. Pills and whiskey, they say. Note said he couldn't live the lie anymore. Roger's voice fractured, and he hurled the letter into the dust, where it fluttered like a wounded bird. All those years, he chose the spotlight over us. And now this, leaving me to carry the blame. I pulled him into a hug, his body rigid at first, then shattering against mine. We stood there as the sun dipped low, his sobs muffled in my shoulder, the desert swallowing our grief. But in that vulnerability, something shifted, trust forged in fire, or so I thought. That night, by the fire again, he confessed the deepest cut. I wrote back once, after the alley. Told him I forgave him. Mailed it to his P.O. box. But he never replied. Guess I was just another chapter he closed. The intimacy deepened then, hands lingering longer, glances holding heat. We kissed under the stars, slow, tentative, like testing thin ice over a chasm. It was salvation, that press of lips tasting of salt and second chances, his stubble rough against my jaw, arms wrapping me like barbed wire turned tender. Stay, he whispered against my mouth. Build something real here. I wanted to God, how I did. But dawn brought the wolves to my door. Alex's car crunched up the drive, dust billowing like smoke signals of doom. He stepped out, looking every inch the golden boy, khakis pressed, hair gelled, that fake-ass smile plastered on. Christian, thank God. We need to. Get the hell off my land, Roger growled from the doorway, shotgun loose in his grip, not aimed, but a promise. Alex's eyes widened, flicking between us, the pieces clicking with ugly clarity. You're with him? Some redneck cowboy? After everything I gave you. The slap of those words stung worse than sand in a cut. Gave me. I spat, stepping forward, heart hammering. You gave me scraps, Alex. Lies wrapped in pretty words. He laughed, bitter and broken. This is your rebellion? Fine. But the NDA stands. Sign it, or I'll drag your name through every court in Maricopa County. Tell the world what you are, a homewrecker. Roger tensed beside me, but I held up a hand. The decision crystallized then, hard as quartz. Stay and fight, or run again. Go, I said, voice steady for the first time in months. We're done. Alex left in a spray of gravel, but the damage lingered like exhaust fumes. Roger turned to me, eyes searching. You okay? No, but I nodded, pulling him close. That night, we made love, not frantic, but deliberate, bodies mapping forgiveness in the dark. His hands on my skin were reverence, each touch erasing Alex's ghost. I love you, he murmured, the words of vow etched in starlight. But love's a tricky Mustang, and ours bucked wild the next week. I dove into the ranch life, mucking stalls at dawn, learning to read the sky for rain, while Roger retreated, haunted by Eli's shadow. Whispers from town reached us. Eli's death splashed across local news, tragic fall of rodeo star, with no mention of the man he'd left bleeding. Roger read the articles in secret, his face a mask of fury and sorrow. The misunderstanding brewed slow, fueled by my own insecurities. One evening, I found the locked trunk open, Eli's old rodeo buckle glinting inside, alongside letters yellowed with time. One caught my eye, postmarked after Roger's forgiveness note. I can't rock. The world's not ready for us. Marry her, build the life I can't give you. Forgive me. Signed, your Eli. Heart pounding, I confronted him at supper. You kept this? After he chose her. Chose everything but you? Roger's fork dropped. Chris, it's not. You forgave him, and he threw it back in your face. Rage boiled up, hot and irrational. Jealousy for a dead man. Fear that I'd be the next footnote. Am I just your rebound? Some city boy to fill the void till you find another ghost. His face crumpled, then hardened. You think that's it? After what we've... Damn it, Christian, I buried that. For you. For us. The fight escalated, words flying like fists, accusations of hiding pain, of using each other as bandages. You're running scared too, he shouted. From Alex, from your family. Hell, from yourself. I stormed out into the night, the desert of black moss swallowing my footsteps. Hours later, pride spent, I returned to an empty house, truck gone, note on the table, need space. Don't follow. R. Panic clawed my throat. I drove blind into the dark, headlights carving tunnels through sagebrush, until I found him at the canyon rim, staring into the void where Eli had once proposed they run away together. Go, he said, voice hollow. Before we destroy each other. The high tide crashed then, my phone buzzing with a call from my sister. Dad's heart attack, critical in Scottsdale. The pull tore me in two. Family I'd fled, or the man who'd saved me. I can't lose you both. I choked, dropping to my knees beside him. Roger turned, tears carving tracks through dust on his cheeks. Then choose, Chris. For real this time. Dawn broke as I made my call, not to run, but to fight. We loaded Juniper and headed east, Roger at my side, his hand steady on the gear shift. The hospital was a sterile hell of beeps and bleach, Dad pale under fluorescent lights, Mom's eyes red-rimmed accusations. We saw the news about your friend, she whispered, meaning Alex's smear campaign splashed online. It's more than that, I said, gripping Roger's hand. This is Roger, the man I love. The room froze, then fractured, Mom's gasp, Dad's weak murmur of son. But Roger didn't flinch. He told them his story, voice steady as reining a bronc. Eli's light and lies, the forgiveness that freed him, the love he'd found in a lost professor under the stars. Ain't about labels, he finished. It's about choosing each other every damn day. Dad's eyes met mine, watery but clear. I was wrong, boy. About a lot. It wasn't absolution, but a crack in the wall. Human, messy, real. We drove back west that week, the desert blooming improbable green from monsoon rains. The ranch waited, expanded now in our minds. A queer haven, solar-powered cabins for wanderers like us. Roger strummed his guitar on the porch at sunset, the melody our own. Eli's ghost laid to rest. Alex's threats crumbled under truth's weight. Some endings are tidy, wrapped in bows. Ours, it's ongoing, scarred and stubborn, like the land we call home. In the quiet hours, Roger's head on my chest, I trace the lines of his face and think, lost in the desert, a cowboy found me. And in sharing his story, he mended mine. We're not perfect. Fights flare like summer lightning. Doubts whisper like wind through canyons. But we're here, building something unbreakable. In America's vast heart, where the horizon tricks you into believing in forever, that's enough.